Welcome to the discussion. Today we're diving into the turbulent history of Operation Wetback, a forced mass deportation in 1954 that reshaped communities.
Yeah, it's really intense. Can you kick things off with the background that led to this operation?
Sure. So, after World War II, the U.S. faced huge economic anxieties, right? There were millions of soldiers coming home looking for jobs while industries like agriculture and railroads still needed labor. That's when many Mexican workers, brought in via the Bracero program, stuck around. But the mood quickly shifted as those workers became scapegoats.
I get it. So competition for jobs, coupled with rising nativism, started painting these workers as outsiders rather than essential contributors.
Exactly. And this wasn't just about economics. Politicians and the media began using dehumanizing language. Operation Wetback itself was a racial slur and a clear indicator of the deep-seated prejudice.
Right.
It's a stark reminder of how language can codify racism.
And then there was the Cold War angle too, wasn't there? The whole atmosphere of fear and suspicion further fueled the crackdown.
Yes, absolutely. During the McCarthy era, immigration quickly got swept up with national security concerns. With a growing obsession over control and conformity, the U.S. government used deportations to signal a strong, almost militaristic stance, like a blunt instrument to intimidate.
So the operation wasn't really a spontaneous reaction. It was a deliberate political move.
Exactly. It was multiple converging factors: economic tension, nativism, Cold War paranoia, plus political pressure, especially from states like Texas and California. Those states pushed hard for federal intervention, demanding that a labor force be controlled and, if necessary, removed.
Yep.
That pressure really escalated things.
And let's not forget the human toll. Families were separated, legal rights trampled on, and, people, many legal residents and even citizens, were deported without warning.
Right. It was brutal. Imagine being deported to a place you've never even seen with no resources or chance to defend yourself. It's like, an extreme violation of basic human rights.
That's heartbreaking, truly. I mean, when the state essentially ignores due process, you end up with nearly 1 million people uprooted.
Yes, and the deportations were executed in a military-like fashion, raids on neighborhoods, farms, even workplaces. The legal processes were completely sidestepped, and there were mere formalities at best, leaving many without a voice. It's really disturbing.
Beyond the immediate human tragedy, what were the broader economic and social consequences in the U.S.?
The fallout was enormous. Entire communities were shattered. Schools, churches, even labor unions were thrown into disarray. Companies that depended on immigrant labor, especially in agriculture, ended up with massive workforce shortages, which in turn drove crop losses and even higher food prices. It was a cascade of unintended consequences.
And in Mexico, the impact wasn't any better either. Deportees flooded border towns that weren't prepared to absorb such a massive influx.
Exactly. Picture this: thousands arriving without jobs or housing, leading to overcrowded camps and a humanitarian crisis on the other side of the border. The disruption was severe, both economically and socially.
Right.
It was a mess on both sides.
Now here's an interesting twist. Operation Wetback was followed, almost paradoxically, by a quick resumption of importing Mexican laborers via the Bracero program, wasn't it?
Yes, and that's the irony. The deportations didn't solve the underlying labor issues. They merely inflicted suffering and turmoil. Within a year, Mexican labor was back in demand, proving that simply removing people wasn't a sustainable solution.
Yeah.
It's like trying to patch a leaky boat by bailing out water. It keeps coming back.
I mean, it really highlights how economic needs can drive policy, even when ethical considerations are blatantly disregarded.
Absolutely. It raises a critical point about the dangers of using mass deportation as a political tool. It's a short-sighted, brutal approach that ultimately backfires.
Now, thinking about today, there's been talk of resurrecting similar ideas. like with Donald Trump proposing a new massive deportation plan using the National Guard and detention camps. How do you see that connecting to Operation Wetback?
Well, it's disturbingly reminiscent, isn't it? The language of control, the disregard for individual rights, and the repetition of past mistakes. History warns us that such policies can lead to catastrophic social destabilization while targeting vulnerable communities. It's like history is echoing its worst chapters.
I get that. But some might argue that the context today is different. I mean, don't modern systems have safeguards to prevent such extremes?
That's a fair point, but the structural issues remain. Even with safeguards on paper, the intensity of political pressure and economic anxiety can push policies dangerously close to those historical extremes. It's like, if you ignore the lessons, you're just asking for history to repeat itself in new
Right.
forms. There's the risk of repeating systemic abuses.
Sure, but don't you think that modern technology and media might help expose and counteract these policies before they spiral out of control?
In theory, yes. However, consider this. Technology can amplify both the good and the bad. Rhetoric, which might once have been contained, now spreads like wildfire, and biased narratives can form even quicker, which might actually embolden extreme policies if unchecked. I see your point there.
So it seems like we're facing the double-edged sword of modern communication. More awareness, yes, but also more division.
Exactly. And that division can create fertile ground for policies that at their core echo Operation Wetback. It's like a warning sign, a lesson that forgetting or ignoring this dark chapter can lead us straight into a repeat
Yep.
of past atrocities. History is really a stern teacher here.
And the effects ripple far beyond the immediate deportations, long-lasting trauma within communities that affects generations.
Absolutely, the legacy is profound. Communities lost trust in government institutions, and for many, the trauma lingered for decades. The fear that anyone could be swept away, legal citizen or not, cast a long shadow over civic participation and community life. It's a dark stain on our past that still informs our present.
I'm also struck by how the economic impacts fed into a vicious cycle. Labor shortages, economic downturns, and then rash policy responses that only deepened economic instability.
Yep, it's a classic case of knee-jerk policymaking, where short-term actions lead to long-term damage. When you remove essential workers, you destabilize vital sectors. And then, ironically, you demand those workers back through channels like the Bracero program, but with even more exploitation. It's like a perpetual
You got it.
catch-22.
And, if we think about today, proposals for massive domestic deportations, it raises the question, aren't we in danger of repeating this catastrophic cycle?
We very well could be. History shows us that mass deportation is not just ineffective, but, self-destructive. It risks not only harming families and communities, but also undermining the very economic systems that rely on immigrant labor. The consequences can be far-reaching.
It's a complex feedback loop. When you destabilize a community, you undermine social trust, economic stability, and even national unity.
Exactly. And that's why these lessons matter today. They serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder that any policy built on fear and exclusion is bound to falter and cause widespread damage,
Right.
because punishing the vulnerable only weakens the whole nation.
And when you reflect on it, it's evident that our future policies need to embrace more humane and inclusive approaches rather than repeating the mistakes of the past.
Absolutely. Recognizing that our history is not just a series of events but important lessons for today is crucial. It's like a mirror. We have to look at it and see clearly or risk being trapped in a cycle of repeated errors. Exactly.
So the takeaway is clear. If we want to move forward and build a just society, we need to face these dark chapters head-on and learn from them rather than ignore their warnings.
Precisely. Only by understanding the full scope of what happened in 1954 can we hope to avoid a future where civil rights are trampled and economic stability is sacrificed for
Yeah.
fear-driven policies. And that's a message we need to keep alive for generations to come.
Thanks for this in-depth conversation. It's been both sobering and enlightening.
Thank you. It's been a powerful reminder that our past holds insights we can't afford to forget.